Well, dear colleague, happy to be with you, even if remote. It's a little bit strange for me to address you today without your presence, but I hope you're all well and that it will be interesting for you to know what the Code Commission has done during all this year. Because of this COVID-19 pandemic, the 88th General Session of the World Assembly was, of course, deleted, cancelled. And what I will propose to you today is to come back to the activities of the Code Commission and also especially insist on the texts that were proposed for adoption this year and that will, I hope, be adopted next year in 2021. Of course, these texts are still possibly commented by the delegates. I hope that you will come back to us, but not with the comments that were already discussed or that were not accepted in our last meeting. So please come back on this text with the comments that are new and well argumented. So first of all, I'd like to thank the other specialist commissions for their advice and support. We work a lot with, of course, Scientific Commission and the Biological Science Commission, but also with the Aquatic Animal Health Commission. And we also have a lot to do with the other groups, and I thank the other groups, and of course, I thank the Secretariat for its never-ending commitment and to work with us and to have our work as easy and efficient as possible. So again, the texts that were for adoption this year will be reviewed in September or February 2021 until we adopt it in May 2021. Of course, depending on our work program, we will see if we review them again in September or in February or in both. So that will include also the last updates that have been done because of the comment cycle on you just a few minutes ago. These chapters that are circulated for comments, they follow the same path as before, and they will be, of course, looked at in September and in February, and we'll see if these ones or which of these ones are proposed for adoption next year. So we met twice, of course, in September 2019, 11 to 19, and in February 2020. The members of our commission, as you can see on the screen, if it's possible to move, are Gaston Maya-Funes and Masatsugu Okita, my two vice presidents, and the three members, Salah Hamami, Bernardo Todeschini, and Lucio Ignacio Carbajo, whom I thank very much for their support and their commitment. Really, they are completely dedicated to their job, and not only for the meeting of the commission, but also meeting other groups and meeting also for some international meeting, especially the regional conference meeting. Since last time, we had these two meetings, but also exchanges between the meetings. We had electronic exchanges by email, but also by group meetings by Zoom or by Skype, etc. It was very interesting to have these meetings, especially before the physical meeting, in order to prepare the agenda. When we participate to other group meetings is as observers. We are not actually members of the other group meetings, but we are observers. It's very interesting also to get the information fresh from the guy who was in the other group when we are discussing the text at the Code Commission. So I told you that we work a lot with the SCAD and the Biological Standards Commission, the Lab Commission, as we say. It's very important to highlight the fact that we have now some more, let's say, regular meeting with the SCAD, and we have meeting of the bureaus. The bureau is the president and the two vice presidents. And they discussed in September and February during our meeting, because we had our meeting at least 1 week was together, at least at the same time, and we discussed the topics of common interest. So, for example, you have this four on the screen, the procedure for the evaluation of diseases against the criteria, and I will come back to this in the current discussion, and also the chapter on FMD, which is always a very complicated chapter. Case definition, which was brought by the SCAD and the Secretariat, and the famous protection zone that we left behind when we adopted our chapter on zoning and compartmentalization, the new chapter 4.4, and we came back on this. Is very important. With the lab commission, we had a meeting in February, and mainly on the agenda, because it's very important for us to put in line our common agenda and have sometimes discussions on chapters that are moving together in parallel, so that we can have the same pace, let's say, and not to have inconsistency in the way we are dealing with some chapters. It's a case, of course, of case definitions, which is something for which the lab commission has a lot to do because of the testing, and also the AI chapter, and especially on the case definition of AI, of course. So the chapters for adoption that we are proposing this year, and of course they will adopt it again, this will be in 2021, are the user's guide, the glossary definition, and notification of disease, infection, infestation, animal health surveillance, and then chapters on veterinary services and on disease. So for the guide, the user's guide, nearly every year we are proposing a change. That's because of the, of course, of the change we make in the code. They should be reflected in the user's guide. We just propose two minor changes. One on section B for consistency for with current terminology in the code, and added the sentence on the chapter 2.2 that was added to the code, and it was not reflected in the user's guide. So I hope this is very easy for you to adopt it. In terms of definition, the glossary, we had long discussions on the epidemiological unit. You know that with the new chapter that we want to adopt that we adopted on surveillance, we move a lot of text in the chapter on surveillance. We want to move part of this definition of epidemiological unit in the text of the chapter 1.4, and keep this definition as short and precise as possible. So this is what we propose. We have done some revision. We got your comments, and I think now we are ready to adopt this new, concise, precise, and comprehensive definition, while keeping some precision in the chapter 1. For the captive wild, feral, and wild animal, again, this was also a discussion that came back in September 2018, and we proposed this change of captive wild animals because of the new adoption of the chapter 15.1 on ASF, and some members wanted to amend the definition of captive wild because of the epidemiological role of this type of animal in the disease. And consequently, because of the comments of the member, we also proposed to change the definition of feral and wild. We discussed that with the SCAD, like for epidemiological unit, and we discussed also with the wildlife working group. And now with this fourth proposal, I think we are ready for adoption of this updated and maybe more understandable and useful definition. We have also a proposal of definition for poultry. It is linked with the modification of chapter 10.4. I will come back after when we talk about the chapter disease. On the chapter 1.1, still there was some need for take a remedy for inconsistencies that we had in the notification of members. The WAHIS system is clear, but some members had difficulties to understand what were the obligations that are in the chapter 1.1. So this was modified in order to have a clearer guidance for the members on their obligation of notification, and that will be also better in terms of readability. So hopefully that will be agreeable to you, so that we have a better transparency and an easier way of notifying disease. In the same section 1, there was a change, of course, in the list of disease, of the OIE listed disease, and we propose some changes in the article 136 because of the change we propose in the chapter on avian influenza. Again, I will come back to this when we deal with this chapter. On animal health surveillance, there was not a very big change, but still we propose to have a change in the point 1D of article 143 of this chapter because of the definition of epidemiological unit. So I talked about that, and I hope this is okay, because it's a copy and paste of what was in the definition, but with a better maybe explanation. So in the section 1, there was still one other chapter I forgot. It's the procedures for self-declaration and for official recognition by the OIE. You remember we had the discussion because of the change in the code, and having for each disease for which the OIE grants a status, we had a specific chapter, 1.7, 1.8, etc. And so the chapter 1.6 was revised in order to be clearer in terms of procedures that are expected for the members to self-declare or to request for an official recognition. So this is something that I think also has been debated and for long, and that will have some consequences also in the structure of the chapters on disease for which the OIE grants a status. And hopefully this adoption will help our colleagues in the status department and in the other group in the SCAD. The section 3, there was a chapter which was in advance of the others, the veterinary legislation. There were a lot of discussion on this chapter. There was another group. Now I think we took a lot of comment by the members, very good comment indeed. And the work of the secretariat was very good to help us go through this new chapter. It's been really a very, very good revision, and I think now it's very, very near completion, and that will give very good help and guidance for the member who wants to revise their veterinary legislation in terms of quality and comprehensiveness. In the section 4, on disease control and prevention, a draft new chapter was proposed already for comments 2 years ago. And now, in fact, this work began in 2016, and there was first works on this, and this was put on our work program. And now, after a lot of iteration, this chapter is ready for adoption. After that, there will be a new chapter for introduction to this chapter, to the section 4, but the chapter for adoption is this new chapter 4.y. We will see what will be the number, but for the moment, it is clear that we needed this chapter. It's been a long time we discussed that. It is not a chapter focused only on emergency management. It's a chapter focused on disease control, official control programs, and it's not something which is completely compulsory or too restrictive or too, let's say, prescriptive. It's something that gives options to the members, explain them how they can elaborate this type of control programs and what are the bases to elaborate an effective control program. So this is something that I hope that will be useful for the members, and that you would very happily adopt. Another chapter which I think would give a lot of good guidance for the members, but it was difficult to find, let's say, a version that we think is now adoptable by all members, is a draft chapter on welfare of laying hens. chapter 7.z. Again, this was a long debate. We had the 3 years of circulation, 2017, 18, and 19. And now we need to take a decision. Some of the rationale of the answers that we gave to you, I think, are answering the concerns of some of the countries in terms of non-prescriptive and in terms of also giving clear guidance for the members. So we have these things not being too prescriptive, but giving clear guidance and taking into account all the situation that the members can face. So I think now this chapter is really ready. It gives answers to these concerns by focusing on criteria for measurables rather than on pure output-based criteria. And these outcome-based criteria help, I think, the members to define their own policies in their own countries, of course, for the best of the laying hen production systems, because we are based on science, and the science gave us some data that led our work towards this final chapter. I hope that you will not miss this opportunity of adopting this chapter next year. Now, a big chapter also that was debated for a long time, the chapter 10.4, you remember, the chapter that was adopted 15 years ago now, and revised a little bit in the year after, did not prove very effective, because we still have big problems in terms of disease. We have problems in terms of transparency, and we have problems in terms of trade. So this chapter was first looked at in 2017. The other group met 3 times, December 2017, and then in June 18 and in June 19. They did a tremendous job. I was observer to this other group, and really the quality of the work and the openness and really the way the members of the other group were using the data to give some answers to the questions of members were very, very good. So with this, we have to be a little bit creative. In order to avoid underreporting and to avoid over-restrictive trade measures, we propose to have 3 diseases notifiable only for 1 chapter. So we had 2, which were avian influenza and influenza A in birds other than poultry. So we adapted the definition of poultry to the reality of facts and reality of epidemiology, which is that the animals that are only kept in a household are out of the epidemiology, but all the others are concerned. We adapted the definition of the disease by having a disease for high path, because the low path in itself, the various numbers of low path cannot be considered listed. They don't meet the criteria of chapter 1.2, and we added 1 disease because some of these low path viruses have a potential to be deadly. They are zoonotic. So this zoonotic virus should be notified because they, in fact, meet the criteria. But we cannot put all the low path virus because a few of them are zoonotic. So because of that, we changed the definitions. We kept also, as I said last time, that we can find in the report, the monitoring of all the low paths, so that we monitor the potential for mutation of this virus into high path. This is a very important chapter. We need to have the adopted chapter, and of course we will see your comments in the current year, but only those that actually are with a very, very good rationale, because we are clear now and we are near the end and we are near the adoption and we need this chapter. We had also two, let's say, a few changes in the chapter on peste des petits ruminants because of, I talked about that when we discussed the status. We adapt and we try to harmonize with a lot of work by the headquarters, all the chapters for which the OA grants a status. And the chapter that was taken as a, let's say, a martyr document was the peste des petits ruminants. So some changes were proposed for Article 3, Article 7, and also we had some proposal and comments to modify the Article 24 and 34. So this was done and in view of having the other chapters also being changed in the same way if you adopt this change on that one. Another chapter for a disease for which the OIE grants a status is the CSF, classical swine fever. With the adoption of the chapter 15.1 on African swine fever virus, some of the change in this ASF chapter triggered some discussion on the CSF. And so we came back to the chapter on CSF with our colleagues of the SCAD and proposed some changes to align, let's say, in the spirit. And also we added also the changes for the harmonization of chapters on the disease for which the OIE grants a status. For these two chapters, PPR and classical swine fever virus, I think the changes now are ready. There were a lot of comments, but I think now the comments are all positive and supportive. So we propose for their adoption. So I have finished the description of the chapter proposed for adoption. You see there were not as many as last time, so we tried to now maybe put less chapters for adoption, but maybe more in depth and more ready chapters. Of course, a few words on the text that were circulated for member comments. You remember that was sent in the written report that you received in the end of March. And you have, sometimes it's the first time you see them, sometimes second or third iteration. However, these might be proposed for adoption next year, but we will see that in September when we look at your comments. So really, for those chapters for which we received already comments, so thank you very much to the delegates. And again, please send as many comments as you can. Of course, the comments based on good rationale, well explained and well presented, as it is shown in the report that you received in March. So here you have new definitions for death, distress, euthanasia, pain, slaughter, stunning and suffering. These are mainly related with the animal welfare. We had already gotten some some comments on the definitions. Please let me re-highlight the fact that we are not copying a definition from a book, from a textbook, from a paper, from a scientist. We're trying to find the best definition possible for the code. And if this definition for the code is we find it not useful because the definition in the dictionary is good, then we will not add a definition in the code. But we use the glossary because we need a specific definition that will be useful for us to understand what is written in the chapters of the code. So that's why we try to develop the glossary and not more. So we're waiting for your comments. Article 131, 132, and 139, sorry, on the disease listed is because we had some report of other groups on new diseases or on deletion of diseases or on the name of the disease. So please, again, look at this and look at the report of the SCAD and the report of the other group on a specific disease. On the title 3 of the code, the three big chapters, the two big chapters are 3.1 and 3.2, and there is one new 3x on the introductory chapter to the section 3. Very good work was done by the other group. They met many times, and I hope that you will be happy again to comment on these chapters. Please go ahead, because they are the core of our work, and I hope that we will have something even better than what we have now in order to better serve and guide the members. Zoning and compartmentalization, I talked about that in the introduction because of the work on the protective protection zone. And there again, it's the work that we did a lot with the headquarters and the SCAD. And this will be very useful for you. This will be very, very useful for the SCAD in the future. A new chapter 8Y on trypanosomiasis for African origin. You remember this chapter took the lead in the trypanosomiasis, in the trypanosomosis infection, because we had two other chapters on Durin and on Sura that are behind now, but they are moving. Please go to our work program and you will see that these chapters are not forgotten, but this one was more in emergency, let's say, was more priority. So we put it ahead, and I hope that you will look at it very seriously and give us a lot of comments again. The chapter on infection with Rift Valley fever virus is also something that was shown as a priority in our work program. And we had already some discussion, and I hope that we will find a way maybe to have this adopted next year, but we'll see, because we have a lot of discussion on surveillance and on notification. It's not easy. So again, here, all of you put on your comment. Something new is the chapter on small hive beetle, a proposal by a member. We discussed with the expert of the other group, expert of the reference lab. We proposed some modification to be closer to reality. Here we had some advice from our two reference labs, and this is a new proposal. Avian mycoplasmosis, this was on our work program. It has been there for a long time without a new chapter. Now we begin with a new version, maybe not a lot. If you have comments on the proposal, please do not hesitate. If you have comments on the rest of the text, this is open also for comment. The whole chapter is open for comments. And only one article that was left behind, let's say last time, is the article on the chapter on equine influenza virus on the vaccination protocols. Here again, we had a lot of discussion with the members, but also with the experts and with the ref lab and with the SCAD. And I hope now the proposal we make will make you happy, but we still have time for comments. So with this, I will close my report. I'm sorry not to be able to shake your hands and to see you in real, but I hope that we will have this occasion next year. And in the meantime, I want to repeat that the deadline for submission of all comments is the 3rd of July of this year. It may seem it may seem very soon. However, you have that information already in the report that you received in March, April. So I hope that you will be able to send all the submission for this date, so that the members, so that the headquarters can prepare the best possible papers for us for our meeting in September. And having said that, I thank you for your attention, and stay safe and see you soon. Thank you very much.